To the world, Michael Jackson was more than a superstar. He was a phenomenon, a man who transcended the boundaries of music and culture to become a global icon. Crowds didn't just admire him, they worshipped him. His every move, every note, and every step carried a magnetic pull that millions couldn't resist. But with light comes shadow, and the brighter the star shines, the darker the shadows it casts. For Michael, some of those shadows weren't just critics or the media. They were people who claimed to love him. Not ordinary fans, but individuals whose devotion transformed into dangerous obsession. These weren't admirers cheering from the sidelines. They were relentless figures who stalked, harassed, and in some cases, hunted him across continents. They camped outside his gates, broke into his homes, and dragged him into court with outrageous claims. What began as admiration turned into fixation, and for Michael Jackson, the cost of being adored was often living in fear. Among the most infamous was Denise Pfeiffer, a former bank clerk from Leicester, England. To her, Michael wasn't just a performer, he was a soulmate she had never met. Denise first fell under his spell when she was only 12 years old. For years, she crafted a fantasy world around him, convinced that their hearts were aligned, that they shared a deep emotional bond. She insisted they both loved children, animals, and the planet. She didn't just admire him from afar. She built her very identity around him. "People say I'm obsessed," she once admitted, "but what's obsession? It can mean something dangerous, or it can mean you think about someone all the time. And I do think about Michael all the time." For Denise, her life had one purpose: to orbit Michael Jackson. Her devotion was far from casual. Denise spent an estimated $40,000 following Jackson around the globe during his dangerous tour. She attended nearly every one of the 70 shows that spanned multiple continents. She camped out at airports, even sleeping on the floor of Heathrow just to catch a glimpse of him. At concerts, she put herself in danger, once nearly crushed against the barricades at the front row, and another time almost run over by his limousine. On one daring occasion in Frankfurt, she bluffed her way into Michael's hotel room. For 90 surreal minutes, she sat across from the king of pop, talking to him as if her wildest dreams had finally come true. According to Denise, Michael affectionately nicknamed her Wendy, a nod to Peter Pan's loyal companion. To her, this wasn't just a fan interaction. It was confirmation of the love story she had written in her mind. But dreams can't survive reality forever. In 1993, when 14-year-old Jordy Chandler accused Michael Jackson of abuse, Denise's carefully constructed fantasy began to unravel. She didn't just defend Michael like other fans, she took it as a personal attack. Convinced the Chandler family was motivated by greed, she boarded a plane from Leicester to Los Angeles in early 1994 to confront them directly. What started as misguided loyalty spiraled into criminal obsession. She spray-painted graffiti in red outside the Beverly Hills dental office of Evan Chandler, Jordy's father. She left obscene, threatening phone messages. She even stole office keys and attempted to break into the family's home. Her devotion had transformed into destruction, and her actions could no longer be dismissed as those of an overzealous fan. They had crossed into the territory of crime. On April 10, 1994, Denise Pfeiffer was arrested. She was thrown into Los Angeles' infamous Sybil Brand Women's Jail, where she was held on a $15,000 bond. For 6 days, she lived a nightmare. She would later describe bloodstains on the cell walls, humiliating strip searches, and being handcuffed alongside convicted killers. The experience broke her spirit. "After a few days, I just wanted to kill myself," she confessed later. "I couldn't take it. I was so scared about what Michael would think. I wanted to die in prison." What she expected to be a heroic act in defense of her idol had left her abandoned, alone, and disillusioned. But her case took a bizarre turn when it attracted international headlines and the attention of someone famous. In a twist worthy of Hollywood, actress Lynn Redgrave, a respected British star, stepped in. Deeply moved by Denise's plight, Redgrave put up the $10,000 bail needed to free her. "She rescued me from that hellhole before I lost my sanity," Denise recalled gratefully. To her, it felt like divine intervention. But when she finally stood before a judge, the reality was clear. She wasn't a martyr, she was a criminal. Denise pled guilty to petty theft and vandalism as part of a plea deal, escaping the more serious harassment charges. She was sentenced to 3 years probation, 2 suspended 6-month jail terms, and ordered to stay away from Michael Jackson, the Chandlers, and their associates. Forced to return to England, Denise claimed she had been to hell and back. But the true wound wasn't her prison stay. It was Michael's silence. The man she had sacrificed everything for didn't acknowledge her. That silence cut deeper than any sentence ever could. If Denise Pfeiffer embodied the kind of obsessive loyalty that tipped into crime, then Levon Powys represented something far more unsettling, an obsession so delusional that it blurred the line between reality and fiction. Powys lived many lives under many names: Levon Muhammad, Gabriella Jamila, and most famously, Billie Jean Jackson. Each alias was part of a self-constructed mythology in which she wasn't just a fan of Michael Jackson, but his secret partner, his fiancée, and the mother of his children. In 1987, as Michael prepared to release his Bad album and reassert his dominance over the pop world, Powys thrust herself into the spotlight with a jaw-dropping lawsuit. She filed a $150 million paternity claim, announcing to the world that she and Michael had carried on a 6-year love affair. She insisted he had proposed to her, that they had conceived 3 children together, including 5-year-old twins and an 11-year-old son, and that it was time for him to take responsibility. She claimed the children were conceived in a blue Rolls-Royce, parked outside Michael's Los Angeles home. She even declared that he had asked for her hand in marriage on a specific date, September 13, 1985. Her story had just enough detail to intrigue tabloids, but far too many holes to be taken seriously. Jackson's publicist dismissed the claims as absurd, calling them ridiculous and preposterous. Reporters quickly uncovered evidence that shattered her credibility. A welfare agency revealed that Powys had previously named other celebrities as the fathers of her children, and in one disturbing revelation, 2 of the children she claimed were Michael's had actually been found abandoned in a black Muslim mosque in Chicago. To anyone else, this would have been the end of the story. But for Powys, it was only the beginning. She doubled down on her fantasy, even going so far as to legally change her name to Billie Jean Jackson, a symbolic embrace of the song she insisted had been written about her. To the world, Billie Jean was Michael's chilling tale of a woman who falsely claimed he fathered her child. To Powys, it was proof that her story was real, that Michael had sung about her, that their connection was immortalized in music. In her mind, she wasn't living a delusion, she was living in the lyrics. What made Powys especially dangerous wasn't just her claims, but her persistence. Her harassment of Michael didn't start with the lawsuit. It stretched back years. She lurked outside his Encino estate, loitering near his gates like a shadow he couldn't shake. She impersonated him in luxury boutiques, charging expensive items under his name. In May 1986, she was convicted of trespassing, sentenced to 36 months probation, and slapped with a restraining order. But punishment didn't stop her. Only months later, she was arrested again for trespassing, this time receiving 52 days in jail. Each consequence only seemed to fuel her determination. To outsiders, her behavior might have been dismissed as the antics of an eccentric woman, but to Michael, it was deeply unsettling. He was a man already grappling with fame's suffocating demands, and now he found himself stalked by someone who not only claimed him, but had legally adopted his song as her name. It was as though his art had escaped his control, And in Powas's mind, the boundaries between song and life had dissolved completely. And then there was Michelle Flowers, a name less known than Pfeiffer or Pawas, but no less disturbing in the context of Michael's life. Flowers represented a different form of obsession, the kind that eroded privacy through constant, relentless intrusion. She wasn't content with simply admiring Michael from afar. She made repeated attempts to breach the sanctity of his world, showing up at his properties, pushing herself into spaces where she did not belong, and insisting that she had a right to his time and attention. For years, she cycled through different tactics, convinced that if she was persistent enough, Michael would eventually open the door. Unlike Pfeiffer, who was driven by misguided loyalty, or Pawas, who lived inside a fabricated romance, Flowers embodied the everyday stalker, relentless, entitled, and unwilling to accept rejection. For Michael, she was yet another figure at the gate, another reminder that love from strangers could quickly twist into something darker. Individually, these women might have been dismissed as extreme outliers, but taken together, they painted a picture of the heavy price Michael paid for his fame. He wasn't just adored, he was pursued, claimed, and hunted. Denise Pfeiffer nearly lost her sanity and her freedom because of her devotion. Levon Billie Jean Pawas invented an entire alternate reality in which Michael was her partner. Michelle Flowers eroded his sense of safety with her unrelenting pursuit. They weren't simply fans, they were fixations. The consequences for Michael were profound. He had spent his life giving everything to the public, his art, his image, his heart. Yet in return, some members of that public felt entitled to him, as though he was theirs to claim, theirs to control. They didn't see a man with boundaries. They saw a symbol, a possession, a prize. And so they pushed further and further, blurring the line between admiration and violation. For Michael, the effect was suffocating. His homes, which should have been safe havens, became places of fear. His public appearances, already overwhelming, carried the additional anxiety of wondering who might be lurking in the crowd. Even the very songs he wrote, meant to be expressions of his art, could be twisted into fuel for someone else's obsession. Fame, which had given him everything, had also stolen from him the simplest of freedoms, the right to live in peace. The tragedy of these obsessive fans is not just in the havoc they caused, but in what they reveal about the cost of stardom itself. To be Michael Jackson was to be loved by millions, but also to be hunted by a few who confuse love with possession. His brilliance drew people in, but his humanity was often forgotten. He was adored, yes, but that adoration came with a darker twin, obsession, one that refused to let him go. And in the end, that was perhaps the cruelest irony of all. For Michael, who spent his life singing about love, connection, and healing the world, the love that came back to him was often warped, twisted, and weaponized. To the outside world, he was the king of pop. But inside the gates of Neverland, inside the walls of his private life, he was a man under siege, fighting not just the pressures of fame, but the terrifying devotion of those who claimed to love him most.